Good morning, everybody. So today I thought we would really take a look at a concept. It's hysterical to watch. I have to tell you, it's really hysterical to watch. But if you get a grasp of it, you'll be able to identify your own. And the concept is blind spots. And we all have them. Until we fully get out of the personhood, we all have blind spots. And what are they? These are our own idiosyncrasies or delusions in the personhood that we truly are blind to. We can't see them. It's only until you start waking up you'll be able to see these things. And actually, it's like one of the delusions. When delusions peel from you, you're like, how didn't I see this before? How didn't I see this before? How vulgar. That's really what happens. So what is a blind spot? You really can't see it in yourselves. But let me tell you something. The things that you can pick out in another person that you don't like is one of your own blind spots. It's so hysterical when you see it happen. So here's what we're going to talk about. We see it a lot on the spiritual path. People who are constantly talking about others being an ego, but yet they themselves are an ego and they can't see it. That is a blind spot. So it's hysterical when you see this happen. So if you talk about people on a spiritual path wanting name and fame and say that they're an ego, and you are constantly talking about how realized you are, and yet you can't see that that's ego, it's hysterical. It is hysterical. So as I've described to you, I don't know, a couple of days ago when I made my last video, when you're actually peeling away the personhood, there really is nothing to talk about yourself anymore. And what actually starts happening, you see all of these concepts that we hear about on the path, that we're not the form, we're not the psychological mind, we're not the ego. In the personhood, as we're learning them, they are concepts, but they are in fact truth. You see, you can't fake anything on this path, and it is the ones who are out there faking. I really want to roll on the floor laughing. That's all I can say at this point. You understand, the very first thing that happens to us on the path to help us get realized is, and understand being realized is a concept. There's nothing real about it because the self is the only thing here. Okay? So, but the very first thing we learn is that we are not the form and we are not the psychological mind. And how we truly come to become this is constantly introspecting, getting in touch with the self, healing our traumas. Because as trauma's healed, we're letting go of the personhood. This is what's happening. As traumas heal, we're letting go of the personhood. So anyone that you see, and I mean anyone that you see, that is like a flashing light drawing attention to themselves, well, sweetheart, they are fully attached to the body mind. That's all I can tell you. They are fully attached to the body mind. And how that plays upon itself, you've got to listen to what people say. Anyone who you hear saying they're constantly saying they're a realized being, but yet every word that comes out of their mouth is negative. When they speak about other people, it's negative. Body, mind, it's all in personhood, because understand, you cannot even see anybody else as separate. You see, literally what happens when you no longer believe that you are this body mind anymore, and you see yourself as consciousness, then what happens? That vision that I had, see, this happened to me, this whole path. That vision that I had with the bodies on the clothesline that were limp, and then the source came in and the bodies came to life. That's exactly how I see everyone now. That truly is how I see everyone now. It's the source having various experiences through different forms. And the only thing that is different about any of us is our different forms. But the forms are not who we are. So when a person is genuinely realized, they don't have anything negative to say about anybody else. Because that other person is them. Because they're not the form. See, if a person is genuinely realized, they truly understand this. And where they're not, their words give them away. You have to pay attention to people's words. Speaking negatively about other people, calling out the negativity of other people all the time is a dead giveaway that there's personhood there. They're in the sleep. These are all blind spots that we have in the personhood. You see, when we look at somebody else and we're seeing negative aspects. We're seeing things that rub us the wrong way. We're seeing things we don't like. But we've stopped doing introspection on ourselves because we believe we're there, we're done. It's hysterical, man. It's hysterical. So, and the other thing that I would like to tell you guys, when you hear these sleepers who pretend to be realized beings out here discuss consciousness, or I don't know what they're discussing actually, because I don't believe they know what they're discussing. When you hear comments like your consciousness, is your consciousness still, or is your consciousness in constant flux? Well, you see, your consciousness is always still. Consciousness is never in flux. That's only the psychological mind. The inner realized master would know that. These are things you have to look for when you listen to people speak. So you have, number one, the very first thing that any of us learn on the spiritual path is that we are not the form. So when you have someone constantly drawing attention to themselves, their physical form, and then the ego shines through as they continuously tell you how realized they are and talk down about other spiritual leaders out here who are after name and fame, but they're not. But they just want recognition that they're a realized being. But that's not name and fame, and that's not ego, is it? And still believing that there's some people out here who are jealous of them. Who would be jealous of a sleeper? That's the only question really one needs to ask. Who would be jealous of a sleeper? See, these are all blind spots. This is pure ego for someone to actually sit there and believe that they are a realized being and believe that there's people out there who are jealous of them. And they sit in judgment of everyone around them, and yet they refuse to look at themselves. These are our examples of blind spots, sleeper, delusion, personhood, someone who is definitely still attached to the body mind. And when you see this out here on the internet, and now that I said it to you and I brought it to your attention, when you see this out on the internet, identify it immediately, and then look inside and think about, what have you said today? Has anything you said today mimicked any of these things? This is how you're going to catch your blind spots. This is going to be how you're going to catch them. Okay? Remember what I told you. You have got to do introspection constantly. This is not a once in a while game here that, like some people say, oh, let me try to meditate, see if I can meditate today. And then a month goes by before they'll try again. No, this is something you've got to do constantly. And I mean constantly. So these are things, these are key things that you will see, especially with fake gurus out here. You will see this all the time. Number one, drawing attention to their form. Number two, judging other people out there, calling other people, especially spiritual leaders, saying that they're after name and fame while they're playing the humble, realized person, yet they can't stop telling everybody how realized they are. Pure ego, yet they are unable to see that it is pure ego. Believing that other people out there are jealous of them. You have to understand, if you believe someone is jealous of you, you're seeing yourself as separate from that person. You are in body mind. You are in the personhood, and you are totally deluded. Who in their right mind would be jealous of a sleeper? And finally, their concepts, they don't even have their concepts correct. Something very simple like, is the consciousness still or is it fluttering? Well, the consciousness never flutters. The consciousness is completely still. That is the self. The only thing that flutters is the psychological mind. You see, when these people don't know these concepts, these are basic understandings for anyone on the path. Forget about a realized guru. These are key elements that you must pick up on. And once you pick up on them, bring it right inside yourself. Bring it right inside yourself. See, and then you're going to sit back and just laugh at the whole thing, how idiotic it is. You know, the only sad part about it is for other people who are still sleeping, these fakes out here are misleading people. And that's really what gets my goat, is that these fakes out here are misleading people. And, you know, I have to fall back on Nisargadatta's words that God is perfect and everything is well, and leave it at that. But you've got to be able to identify these things. And once you, because here's the thing, because you don't know who you are yet, because you still see yourself as the body, it's hard for you to look inside and see these things. So blind spots are in you galore. You can't see, but you're identifying your blind spots in other people. This is why I'm bringing this to your attention. So look at other people, whoever you see on the internet, whoever it is. Start doing it with everybody. Even if you're watching the news, if you're watching game shows, if you're in a restaurant, you're sitting down at a table and you overhear people next to you sitting down talking. See how many times they say the I word and how personal their conversation is. And see if you can identify what is personhood, what is ego. And because once you start identifying this in other people, you will truly begin to see it in yourself. And that is truly when, once you identify it, realization is not far away. And that's really what I want to tell you. You've got to start identifying. And that means every single person you listen to, look at, interact with, you need to be assessing all the time. What are they saying? What do you know as far as your understanding of the teachings by Nisargadatta, by Ramana Maharishi, and anyone else you've heard? And how is what you're hearing this person say adding up to not only what you've heard, but what you have experienced yourself on the path? And I believe that's actually the most important. But until you start having experiences, you have to rely on the master's teachings. So what are you hearing that these people are saying, who are supposed to be realized beings, that are not even making sense? Which shows you that they are dead and asleep and they're nothing more than Bible thumpers. You've got to start identifying this in everybody. The fake gurus out here are beautiful examples, because they're supposedly speaking about a spiritual path, and yet the personhood is shining through beautifully. You're able to see it right away. People out in the world will help you to identify your blind spots, and you will start paying attention to how you speak, how you think, what is your thought process, and these things, this is constant introspection. These things will begin to change once you are able to identify it. This is every second of every day that you are awake and interacting or looking at something. It's what you're doing if you're serious on the path. So blind spots, we first, before we're able to see them in ourselves, it is what we identify in other people that we don't like. They are our own blind spots. See? And once you transcend your own blind spots, you're still able to identify them in people, but you have no emotion about them either way. You're just able to identify them. And like I just did, use them as a teaching tool. Okay? So for those that are serious on the path, this has got to be something that you do all the time. And not say anything to anybody, not let anybody know you're assessing them, observing them. But even when you're in a store, anywhere you are where there's people around you, listen to how people talk and listen how the personhood just rings out to you. Because after a while, you'll be able to identify it like crazy. And when you're able to identify it like crazy out there, you will also be able to identify it like crazy in yourself. That is when the big changes start happening in you. Okay? And trust me, you're not going to be out here telling everybody how realized you are, because realization is just another concept for the sleepers. Because the self is the only thing that's here. And there are not individual selves in each one of us. I want you to understand that. There are not, and I don't have a self, and you have a self. That still sees us as separate from each other, that we're individual selves. No. There's only one self. It's consciousness. The same consciousness that's in this form is in your form, is in a rock, is in a tree. It's the very same consciousness. There is no separate self in each one of us. This is what everyone has to understand. So you see, you will be able to identify these fakes in a heartbeat now. The self, the consciousness, never has a fluttering of her mind. It is always still. It is only the personhood that has the fluttering of the mind. And you would think that a realized being would know that, right? Well, this is how you can tell that they are not realized. And by identifying that outside of you, you will begin to be able to identify it within you. This is the importance of this. Okay, you guys, get busy. Get busy. You got to be doing this all the time. And you're not just hearing it from me. If you listen to any of those Nisargadatta readings that I've done, Nisargadatta says it over and over again. Over and over again. This has got to be a way of life for you, or it's not going to happen. It's got to be a way of life. You guys be blessed.